Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today, and you know what that means. Time to roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty of some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, climate change is the elephant in the room, right?
It is, and there's a lot of talk, a lot of opinions flying around, so it's easy to feel overwhelmed or even lost.
Exactly. And that's why we're tackling this blog post, Climate Change Developments, a warming planet on the brink today. I gotta be honest with you, some of what I read, well, it was kind of a punch in the gut.
Yeah, it's not exactly light reading.
Like, we know things are warming up, but this post dives into how fast it's actually happening. And it makes you wonder, are we past the point of no return already?
Well, that's a question scientists are grappling with right now, and this blog post highlights one of their biggest concerns.
Yeah, 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, right?
Yes, it seems like that number's everywhere these days, and for good reason.
I get that it's like a tipping point, but honestly, it's hard to picture what hitting that actually means.
Think of it like, well, imagine Earth has a fever. 1.5 degrees is where things start to get really dangerous.
Dangerous how? Like what actually happens?
We're talking about impacts that are, well, pretty much irreversible. Ecosystems start to collapse and sea levels rise dramatically.
Right, those mega storms hitting the coastlines.
Yeah.
That's what I keep thinking about.
Absolutely. This blog post, it actually cites a study that predicts a possible 30% increase in Category 5 hurricanes by the end of the century.
Whoa, 30%? That's a huge jump.
Imagine those winds over 150 miles per hour becoming the new normal, the level of damage, the impact on coastal communities.
It's terrifying. And it's not just hurricanes and rising sea levels, right? This blog post mentioned something about a major ocean current system being at risk. It all sounds a bit like a sci-fi disaster movie,
It does, a little bit. The AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, it's a huge system that plays a vital role in regulating the global climate. Yeah. Think of it like a giant conveyor belt in the ocean. Warm water flows north, keeping the climate in Europe relatively mild.
Okay, so Europe's nice weather is all thanks to this underwater current.
Pretty much. But the post explains how the AMOC is weakening, probably because of all that meltwater from Greenland messing with its flow.
So no more warm water flowing north.
Exactly. And if this current shuts down completely, well, Europe could be in for some seriously harsh winters. It's a dramatic shift, almost like someone flipped a switch.
A whole continent plunged into a deep freeze. And from what I read in this post, it's not just a future problem either. It feels like we're already living with the consequences of climate change, right? You just have to look at what happened in Europe this past summer.
Absolutely. Those record-breaking heat waves, those devastating wildfires, it's all part of a bigger pattern, and this blog post connects the dots.
Right, those wildfires, the ones that have you so worried about your hometown.
Exactly. They're a stark reminder that this isn't some abstract future threat, it's happening now.
It's all pretty bleak. But, okay, the post did talk about solutions. It's not too late to act, is it? Like, I remember reading about some really cool advances in renewable energy, right?
There's definitely hope. The blog post, it highlights the amazing progress being made in solar panel technology. They're becoming more efficient and much more affordable.
I've seen those ads for those new solar panels, the ones that look like regular roof tiles.
Exactly. And there's also the incredible potential of offshore wind farms, providing clean energy on a massive scale. We're on the verge of a clean energy revolution, which is pretty exciting.
I was really struck by how much the blog post emphasized individual actions, though. I always figured it was up to governments and big corporations to make the big changes, but they made a really compelling argument for the power of collective action.
Yeah, systemic change is crucial, absolutely. But this post makes the point that individual actions, when you multiply them by millions of people, they create a ripple effect. It's about being mindful of our consumption, about choosing sustainable options.
So like even just choosing to bike to work instead of driving or cutting back on meat, that actually makes a difference.
Absolutely. The post, it actually cites a study that found if just 10% of the global population shifted to a plant-based diet, we could significantly reduce agricultural emissions. It's a powerful example of how seemingly small choices can have a big impact.
That's actually really motivating. So we've covered the stark realities of climate change, those potential consequences if we don't act, but also, a roadmap for change. This blog post really was a whirlwind of information.
And it leaves us with a really important question. Knowing what we know now, what are you going to do? What specific action, big or small, are you willing to take to help build a more sustainable future? Because that power to make a difference, well, it's in your hands.
This deep dive has been, well, eye-opening is an understatement. It's a lot to process, but I'm walking away feeling a real sense of urgency. But also a sense of hope. We have the knowledge, the tools, and the power to turn things around. So let's get to work, building a more sustainable future, one choice, one step, one action at a time. Ever feel like you're just drowning in information? Trying to figure out what's real and what's fake online is a full-time job.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, that's what we're talking about today. Buckle up, folks, because we're diving deep into Meta.
Facebook, Instagram, Threads, the whole shebang.
Right, all that, and all the rumors swirling around how they're going to handle, well, pretty much everything, from fact-checking to, like, what you can even talk about. We've got a ton of reports and leaks to unpack.
A real mountain of them.
Yeah, but by the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly what's going on and why it matters. Whether you're, scrolling through your feed every 5 minutes or just trying to stay informed.
Exactly. And speaking of informed, we got to start by saying that a lot of what we're about to discuss, still just rumors, leaks. Meta hasn't officially confirmed anything yet.
Right, so think of this as a behind-the-scenes look at what might be coming down the pipeline. And the first potential change. It's a doozy.
Yeah.
Meta might be phasing out its third-party fact-checking program.
Yeah, which understandably has a lot of people asking, like, okay, so who's going to decide what's true online now?
I mean, we've all seen those fact checks that seem a little, how do I put this nicely? Biased.
Definitely. But going from that to having no system for flagging misleading content, that feels like a recipe for, well...
total chaos.
Exactly. And that brings us to what's supposedly replacing it. Community notes. Think of it like...
Wikipedia for fact-checking.
Yeah, something like that. Users can add context to posts, point out potential misinformation, inaccuracies, or just like missing pieces of the story, all collaboratively.
So basically, Meta's saying, we're washing our hands of this. You guys figure it out.
In a nutshell, yeah. And look, it's got potential, more voices, more perspective.
The wisdom of the crowd.
Exactly. But it also comes to some big question marks, like how reliable can a system like that actually be? Can you really prevent manipulation?
Right, because what's to stop a bunch of people from just, like, coordinating and pushing their own agenda?
Exactly, and that's not even getting into the scale of it all. Meta's talking about billions of users. Can a crowdsourced system really handle that kind of volume?
It's a lot to think about. And it's not just fact-checking that's potentially changing. There's also talk about Meta loosening restrictions on what they consider sensitive topics.
Yeah, like immigration, gender identity, stuff that tends to get pretty heated.
Which, on the one hand, could be good, right? More open discussion, more viewpoints represented.
Sure, but it's also a tightrope walk. Where's the line between open dialogue and, harmful rhetoric? How do you prevent hate speech or even calls to violence? Especially when you're essentially relying on users to police themselves.
And that's what makes the rumors about Zuckerberg's stance on all this so interesting. Because apparently he's admitted that these changes could lead to more harmful content online.
Yeah, if that's true, it really makes you wonder about Meta's priorities here. Are they putting free speech above everything else, even user safety?
And what does that mean for us, the everyday users? It feels like we're headed towards a much wilder, more unfiltered version of social media. One where it's on each of us to figure out what's real and what's not.
And that means we need to be even more careful, more critical. We need to hone those media literacy skills, learn how to spot bias and evaluate sources.
And the skills, they're going to be crucial in this new landscape. It's all still up in the air, of course, nothing's confirmed. But Meta's clearly thinking about some pretty massive changes. Changes that could completely transform how we consume and share information online.
So yeah, keep an eye on this one, folks. It's far from over. And in the meantime,
maybe brush up on those critical thinking skills, right? They might just come in handy.
You might need them more than ever.
For sure. Okay, so we're diving deep today into a really just awful story. Liam Payne,
Yeah.
Just a tragic thing. We've got the TMZ article, we've got the video, lots to unpack here. But before we even start, I think we need to take a second and just remember that this is about a real person.
Absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in the headlines, but this is someone's life.
Exactly. Someone's son, someone's friend. So,
Right.
All right, let's, just a quick recap for anyone who needs it. Late 2024, Liam's in Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
Found dead after falling from his hotel balcony, drug suspected, investigation launched. But now there's this new twist.
Right.
A hotel worker arrested, connected to Liam's death. This is where things get really, really interesting. So what can you tell us about this new development?
Well, the person arrested is Ezekiel David Pereira. He's like 21 years old. He was a bellboy at the hotel Liam was staying at, the Casa Sur Palermo Hotel.
Yep.
He actually just turned himself in to the police down in Argentina after, kind of being on the run for a little bit.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty big development. What are the charges? What's he being accused of exactly?
He's been formally charged with supplying Liam with narcotics, drugs. But it is important to mention here that Pereira, he hasn't entered a plea yet or really even said anything publicly.
Right. Of course, innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
But it does seem like this arrest could be huge for the investigation, right? It could give them like a direct line to the source of whatever drugs were involved and maybe even paint a clearer picture of what exactly happened in the hours leading up to Liam's death.
Exactly. I mean, this is potentially huge. And then you've got the TMZ video too.
Oh, right. That video showing Liam with Pereira, like just hours before he died.
Yep. In the video, you see Liam going into the basement of the hotel briefly, and he shakes hands with Pereira just 3 hours before his fall. They seem like friendly,
Okay, so we've got a hotel worker who's been accused of supplying drugs. And we've got video of him and Liam together just a few hours before Liam dies. What do you make of the video? What could it mean for the investigation?
Well, it could definitely be used to establish a clear link between Pereira and Liam in those really critical hours.
Yeah.
But it also opens up a whole can of worms, What were they doing down in that basement? Was anyone else there? What was said? What happened? These are all things that investigators are going to be looking into for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It also raises some questions about the hotel itself.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what did they know about what was going on? Could they have done anything? What kind of security measures are in place to protect guests from this kind of thing? I mean, this is kind of scary to think about.
It is, yeah. The hotel's role in all this and their potential responsibility,
Right.
I think that's going to be a big focus moving forward. No question.
Yeah. This whole thing, I mean, even this quick interaction in the basement, it reminds me of how easy it is for drugs to seep into any situation, especially in a world like celebrity, where the pressure is just constant. Liam's case, I mean, it shines a light on this bigger issue. Drug use, celebrity culture, all the pressures that come with that.
Definitely. It's such a complex issue. Celebrities, they're under a microscope constantly. So much pressure, scrutiny, temptation. I mean, it's easy to see how someone could turn to drugs to cope, to escape.
It is. And I guess, I keep going back to Pereira turning himself in. I mean, that could point to a plea deal.
Right.
But could it also be, maybe it's remorse, taking responsibility for his actions?
It could be. Right now, we just don't know his motivation. We got to be
Okay.
careful about jumping to conclusions. I mean, this whole case, it's really blurring the lines between personal responsibility and, maybe a kind of enabling environment. What do you think? Where does enabling end and genuine concern begin? I mean, this is a conversation we need to have.
You're so right. It's a tough one. And unfortunately, Liam's case, it's a harsh reminder of just how tragic the consequences of drug use can be. And it underlines just how important it is that we talk about addiction, that we provide support to people who are struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Addiction affects so many people. It's a real human cost. We got to be compassionate. We've got to work towards providing resources, support systems.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. A hotel worker's been arrested. It looks like he might be able to give us some answers about what happened to Liam. The investigation is ongoing. Hopefully we'll learn more about the specifics of his death. This whole case, it's a warning about the dangers of drug use, about the need to be more proactive about addiction. So do you think, based on what we know now, do you think this arrest will give us a definitive answer about what happened that night?
It's hard to say. I mean, it really depends on whether Pereira cooperates. If he doesn't, things could get a lot more complicated. And there are still so many unanswered questions, like, was anyone else involved? What happened in those final hours?
Yeah, so many unknowns. And even as the investigation goes on, makes you wonder, will we ever really know what happened to Liam in those final hours? And what about the hotel? What responsibility did they have in this? Those are the questions that I keep coming back to.